The hospital bracelet was still on my wrist when I signed the separation paperwork. I noticed it because the pen kept catching on the plastic tab, the one they print the baby's name on and attach to the mother's wrist, so the two of you are linked from the first hour. Mine said Nolan Claire. The one on my daughter's ankle said Nolan Infant F. There was no second adult bracelet. There had been no second adult in the room. I remember the intake nurse glancing at my wrist when I walked in alone, her eyes moving to the parking lot behind me then back. She didn't ask. I didn't explain. I gave her my insurance card and told her my contractions were 4 minutes apart, and she took me back immediately, and that was that. The admitting desk had a clock on the wall above it, white face, black numerals, the institutional kind that never runs fast or slow, just exactly on time always. It said 11:14 a.m. I looked at it because I wanted a fact I could hold on to. I had been having contractions since before dawn. I had timed them, documented them, packed my bag and set it by the door 2 weeks earlier. I had done everything that was asked of me, everything I had prepared for. The one variable I hadn't been able to account for was already 40 minutes south on I-75. That was a Thursday. My husband was somewhere near Findlay by then, heading toward his parents' lake house, the back of his father's SUV loaded with a cooler and his mother's folding lawn chairs. He had joked before he left that I could go to the hospital by myself. I went to the hospital by myself. My name is Claire Nolan. I was 31 years old, a licensed occupational therapist working out of a pediatric clinic in Delphos, Ohio. I had been with Marcus for 6 years and married to him for 3. We lived in a 4-bedroom colonial on Terrace Run Drive that we had bought together, though the down payment had come almost entirely from the savings account I had been building since I was 24, $47,200 by the time we closed, against Marcus's $8,000. Long before Marcus and I were anything to each other, I had been laying the financial groundwork for a life I intended to live carefully. Marcus worked in regional sales for a logistics company. He traveled 2 weeks out of every 6, sometimes more. His parents lived 40 minutes away and called him the way some parents call a child they are still not finished raising, frequently with an expectation of compliance, with the working assumption that whatever else was happening in his life was secondary to what they needed from him. I had understood this about Marcus before I married him. I had told myself it was a loyalty I admired, that a man who showed up for his family would show up for his own. I was wrong, but I did not know it yet when I said the vows. I knew it somewhere around month 8 of the pregnancy, when his mother called to tell us she had booked the lake house for a long weekend in late April and expected Marcus to drive them down, and Marcus said of course, and I said my due date is April 22nd, and his mother said, well, first babies are almost always late. She said it pleasantly. That was the thing about Renata. She delivered everything pleasantly, in a voice that carried the mild administrative warmth of someone reading from a schedule that had already been approved at a higher level. Disagreement in her framework was not conflict. It was simply confusion that she could help clarify. You'll be fine, she told me that evening. Women have been doing this forever. What I had carried in those 3 years of marriage was not invisible exactly. It was just never counted. I worked 36 hours a week at the clinic and took on 2 additional home visit clients on Saturdays because we were trying to pay down the home equity line we had opened for the kitchen renovation, $31,400 drawn against the house, a number I knew precisely because I was the one who had filed the paperwork and tracked the balance. The renovation Marcus had wanted, the layout Marcus had chosen, the contractor Marcus had liked. I had managed the timeline, the inspections, the permit applications, the final walkthrough punch list, all of it, while Marcus traveled or drove his parents to their various appointments and social obligations. The household ran on my administrative attention. The insurance renewals, the property tax calendar, the scheduling around Marcus's travel. When the furnace needed replacing, I researched contractors, got 3 quotes, made the call. When his mother needed a ride to a specialist in Toledo because his father's back was bad that week, I rearranged my Thursday caseload and drove her myself, sat in the waiting room for 2 hours with a patient file open on my lap, drove her home and cooked dinner. I kept a running log of the household's moving parts in a shared calendar that only I ever updated. I tracked the service intervals on both cars. I renewed the homeowner's policy each year and reviewed the coverage. I scheduled the pediatric appointments before our daughter was even born, added them to the calendar, and sent Marcus reminders he acknowledged with a thumbs-up emoji and occasionally attended. I did not perform these things loudly. I was raised to believe that good work was its own record. What I did not understand then was that a record no one sees is not a record. It is just labor. It was somewhere in the middle of those quiet months of preparation, after the lake house email had arrived as a forwarded notification rather than a question, that I opened a folder on my phone. I didn't name it anything significant. I just started putting things in it. My mother had seen it though, the larger pattern, the one I had not yet named. 2 years before, sitting at my kitchen table with her coffee going cold, she had watched me reschedule a client call so I could pick Marcus's dry cleaning up before the shop closed, and she said, quietly and without drama, "Claire, who does this for you?" I told her Marcus did plenty. She nodded once and let it go. I thought about that nod a lot during the pregnancy, during the long evenings when Marcus was traveling and I was doing the prenatal exercises alone on the living room floor, the baby moving under my hands, the house quiet in the way a house gets quiet when one person is carrying it. I thought about what she had seen that I hadn't been ready to see. I thought about how much easier it is to nod and wait than to argue with someone who isn't ready yet. The morning my labor started, Marcus was in the kitchen packing a soft cooler. I had been awake since 4 with irregular contractions. By 9 they had organized themselves into something I recognized from the class we had taken, the class Marcus had attended 2 of the 4 sessions of before a work conflict pulled him out of the rotation. I had gone to the remaining sessions alone, taken notes in the margins of the printed handouts, practiced the breathing with a pillow propped against the headboard. "They're 4 minutes apart," I told him. He looked up from the cooler. His mother's voice was already coming through the phone on the counter, something about whether he was bringing the good camp chairs or the folding ones. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I've been timing them since 6, I said. He picked the phone back up. "Mom, hold on." He set it face down and looked at me with an expression I can only describe as inconvenienced. "It's probably false labor. You said the doctor said first babies are usually." "I know what the doctor said," I told him. "I'm telling you what my body is doing." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "My parents are already in the driveway." I walked to the front window. His father's silver SUV was idling at the curb, his mother visible in the passenger seat, already turned toward the house. I watched her scan the front windows. I watched her say something to his father that made his father nod. "Marcus," I said. "It's only 40 minutes to the lake," he said. "If it gets serious, I'll come right back." "This is serious. Claire." He picked the cooler up. "You've been saying every twinge for 3 weeks is the real thing. The hospital is 12 minutes away. You can drive yourself if it really comes to that." I looked at him. "I'm serious," he said. "You're capable. You don't need me to hold your hand for a false alarm." "And if it's not a false alarm?" He smiled, the particular smile that had always signaled he was done engaging with something he had already decided wasn't worth his full attention. "Then call me and I'll turn around. It's not a big deal, babe." He carried the cooler through the front door. I stood in the kitchen. Something settled in the center of my chest, not panic, not fury, not even disbelief, something older and quieter, the specific weight of a thing finally confirmed after a long time of almost knowing. I heard his father's window roll down. I heard Marcus say, "She's fine, she always does this." I heard his mother say something I couldn't make out, and then I heard her laugh. The SUV pulled away from the curb. I stood in the kitchen for another full minute. A contraction moved through me and I braced against the counter and breathed through it, and when it passed I picked up my hospital bag from beside the door where it had been sitting packed for 2 weeks, walked to my car, and drove myself to Mercy Health St. Rita's. I parked in the emergency bay. I took my bag from the back seat. I walked through the sliding doors. I gave the intake nurse my insurance card. I told her my contractions were 4 minutes apart and had been since approximately 6 that morning. She put a bracelet on my wrist with my name on it. She asked if anyone was joining me. I told her not yet. She took me back. The room had a window that faced the parking structure. There was a monitor on a wheeled cart. The nurse's name was Denise and she had short gray hair and moved with the specific efficiency of someone who had seen every version of every situation and had decided years ago not to editorialize. I called my sister, Paige, who lived in Lima. I did not call Marcus. I did not text his mother. I lay back on the narrow bed and watched the monitor track what my body was doing, and I thought about nothing in particular, and I waited. Paige arrived 40 minutes later, still wearing her work badge clipped to her coat, her hair not fully dry. She had driven 45 minutes without stopping to change. She came in, looked at me, looked at the monitor, put her bag down on the chair by the window and sat. She did not ask where Marcus was. She already knew because I had told her about the lake house in February, and she had said nothing then either, only pressed her lips together in the particular way she did when she was deciding not to say the thing she was actually thinking. My phone lit up at 2:09 p.m. Marcus. I watched his name on the screen until the call went to voicemail. 40 seconds later, a second call. I set the phone face down on the tray table beside the bed. Paige was sitting in the chair by the window, her jacket still on, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee she had gotten from the vending machine down the hall. She looked at the phone and then at me and said nothing, which was exactly right. The contractions were 2 minutes apart. "You're doing great," Denise told me. "I know," I said. Paige made a sound that was almost a laugh and reached over and held my hand, and I held hers back, and 47 minutes later my daughter was born. They put her on my chest. She was 7 pounds 2 ounces and she had a full head of dark hair that surprised me entirely, and she made a sound like a complaint, like someone who had been put somewhere without being consulted, and I felt something crack open in the center of my body, not emotion, not anything I had a word for, just space, enormous and sudden, where something compressed had lived for a very long time. Paige was crying. I was not. I was holding my daughter and watching the window go gray with late afternoon light and thinking that the room was very quiet for something this large. Marcus arrived at 4:40 p.m. He came through the door fast, his jacket half-zipped, his face carrying the specific expression of someone who has realized, too late, that a situation has moved past the point where their arrival still matters in the way they expected it to. He stopped when he saw me in the bed. Saw my daughter on my chest. Saw Paige in the chair. "Claire," he said. "She's here," I said. He crossed the room. He reached toward the baby and I turned slightly, not dramatically, just enough to be clear. "What happened?" he asked. "I had a baby," I said. "About an hour ago." "You didn't, I called you." "I know." "Claire, I didn't know it was actually," he stopped. He pulled a chair over and sat down. "I thought you were doing this," I said. He was quiet. Paige stood, said she was going to find more coffee and left us there. "I'm sorry," Marcus said. "I should have stayed." "I know." My mother thought. "Your mother thought what?" He looked at his hands. "She thought you were being anxious. That it wasn't real yet." "And he paused. "I believed her over you." Something tightened across my shoulders, not surprise, not grief, the specific sensation of a long-held question finally answered with exactly the answer you already knew. "You said I could drive myself," I told him. "You joked about it." "I know." "You laughed, Marcus. In the driveway." "Your mother laughed." "I know." His voice had gone quiet. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to say nothing," I told him. "I want you to sit there and meet your daughter when she's ready." He did. He sat, and eventually Denise came in and showed him how to hold her, and he held her, and his face did the thing faces do in that moment, and I watched it and I felt nothing shift between us. He came to me 3 days after we brought her home. He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where my mother had asked who does this for you, and he said he thought we needed to talk about what had happened and what it meant. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and took out my phone. I opened the folder I had created in January, 3 months before, when the lake house booking had landed in my inbox as a forwarded email from his mother. Not a question, a notification. I turned the phone toward him and laid it flat on the table between us. On the screen was the PDF from the county recorder's office, the property deed, stamped and dated, showing the ownership structure of the house on Terrace Run Drive. Showing what I had contributed to the down payment in documented, traceable figures. Showing the name of the family law attorney I had consulted in February, whose card was visible at the bottom of the second page. Marcus looked at the screen. Then at me. "You planned this," he said. "I prepared," I told him. "There's a difference." "Claire, you told me I could go to the hospital by myself," I said. "You joked that I didn't need you to hold my hand. You told your mother I was fine and that I always do this, and she laughed and you left." I kept my voice level. "That's what you chose." "That's not. You said I was ungrateful when I asked you to stay home. You said I was always anxious, always overreacting. Those were your words." He was quiet. "So I took them seriously," I said. "I made arrangements accordingly." I was not angry. Something had gone very still behind my eyes, the way a room goes still when everyone finally understands the meeting has already been decided. I'm not asking you to be a bad person, I told him. I'm telling you what I know now about what we are to each other. And I'm telling you that I made arrangements because I understood, somewhere around February, that I had been on my own inside this marriage for a long time already. Being on my own in that hospital room just made it visible. I picked up my phone. I stood. There's a copy of the attorney's contact information on the kitchen counter, I said. I'd suggest calling them in the next few days. I walked to the living room where my daughter was asleep in her bassinet, and I sat beside her, and I did not look back toward the kitchen. That was 14 months ago. My daughter is 13 months old. She pulls herself up on the coffee table now and considers the distance between one piece of furniture and the next with the specific intensity of someone solving a problem she hasn't solved before. I kept the house. The equity calculation came out exactly as the county deed had suggested it would. Marcus moved into a rental on the other side of Delphos in June. We have a parenting schedule that a mediator helped us build, and it functions because I run it the way I have always run things, carefully, without drama, without waiting for someone else to manage it for me. In November, Renata sent me a voicemail. She said she hoped I understood that Marcus had made a mistake, that good men make mistakes, and that she hoped for the sake of our daughter I would consider whether I was being too rigid, too unforgiving, whether I was, and here was the word, ungrateful for everything he had brought to the marriage, for everything the family had tried to offer me. I listened to the voicemail once. I did not call back. I did not call back then or in the weeks after when she tried twice more, and I do not imagine I will. My clinic promoted me to lead therapist in October. I have a caseload I find genuinely good, kids who are learning to do things with their bodies that their bodies haven't quite agreed to yet, and the work of helping them get there is the kind of work that pays you back in ways that don't show up in the pay stub. Paige comes over most Sunday mornings. We drink coffee at the kitchen table and my daughter crawls between our chairs demanding participation in a game only she fully understands the rules of, and the house is louder than it used to be and easier to be inside. On my desk in the corner of the room I've made into a home office, there's a manila envelope. County stamped, the paper inside creased soft along a single fold from the number of times I opened and reread it during those 3 months of preparation. The deed to this house. The one I paid for more than half of. The one that is entirely mine now, in a legal sense that leaves nothing ambiguous. I don't look at it often. I don't need to. It's just there, the way certainty is there once you've actually done the work of acquiring it, not decorative, not sentimental, just evidence of a thing that happened and cannot unhappen. If any of this sounds familiar, if you're sitting somewhere right now doing math on what you've given and what's been returned, I think you already know what the envelope is going to say. Sometimes it helps to go ahead and open it anyway.